I am only assistant in head of Department of Normal and Topography Anatomy.
Sorry, is that Tamara? Tamara, please just wait for a moment. We haven't started the session yet. Okay, thank you, Karapova. I think we're on time now, so I'm going to begin. And I'm very pleased to welcome all our speakers who represent 4 of the 7 continents of the globe, and thus will provide us with some knowledge of body donation from around the world. While the International Federation of Associations of Anatomists recommended in 2012 that only donated bodies will be used for research and teaching, the reality is quite different. In many countries, anatomists will make use of bodies which have not been donated, but are unclaimed. And this has been highlighted in a comprehensive article by Habicht et al., which appeared in Academic Medicine in 2018. While the COVID-19 pandemic interrupted laboratory work in institutions, it is good to know that dissection has once again started up again in many. Those of us who believe that human anatomy is best taught by dissection are keen to ensure that body donation programs are maintained and flourish. I hope by the end of today's round table, we will have more clarity on the sourcing, availability, and issues concerned with utilization of bodies from those institutions which are represented here today. Before introducing the first speaker, I would like, on behalf of all of us here, to acknowledge the millions of individuals who have over the years provided their bodies so that others might learn. Thank you. Our first speaker then is Tamara Abayeva from Kyrgyzstan, and she's going to speak to us about actual problems of cadavers for science and training in the universities of Kyrgyzstan. Tamara, please begin.
Thank you. I will repeat now. Good afternoon, everyone, the professors. Let me introduce myself. My name is Gulnura. So name is Bishba Kızı. Yes, you can see I am an assistant and head of the Department of Normal and Topography Anatomy. Today I will replace only Tamara Abayeva, Tamara Sranalivna. Let me introduce my report topic. This you have internet issues, so I can't open this.
Karapov, can you please open for Tamara?
Your adjustment.
Can no. Thank you so much. I am very worried, so I have little bit language problem, sorry. This topic is actual problems of cadavers for the science and training of the students of medical university in Kyrgyzstan. So human anatomy is the science which deals with the structure of the human body. The term anatomy is derived from the Greek word anatom, meaning cutting, and the term dissections, Latin equivalent of the Greek anatom. However, the two words, this anatomy and dissection, are not synonymous. So this picture, this view, this anatomy, the science of the origin and the development, forms and structure of the human. The word anatomy comes from the Greek anatema, dissect. So next, this next, yes, this professor of Moscow, this Efim Asimukhin, the doctor is not anatomist, not only not useful, but also harmful. And then this professor, Austrasian gynecologist, this
Tamara, you've muted yourself.
Without anatomy, there is no therapy on surgery, but only science and prejudices. And then this history of anatomy. What about the history? Anatomy has a very old and vast history. Someone, the most intelligent people the world has ever seen, been the part of this history. And the overall history of human anatomy can be divided into the following periods. Then this Greek period, Greek period in the history of human anatomy started somewhere near 400 BS. And the most famous anatomist of this period were Hippocrates and Hippocrates. This was regarded as the father of medicine, and he was one of the founders of the anatomy. Then have Roman period, the most prominent anatomist of this period has Galen. He is now at the prince of physicians. It's because he has the first experimental physiologist. He's teaching this very following for nearly 50 centuries. And this have 14th century, the most prominent scientist of this period was Martin de Lis. And his history, yes, he was an Italian and had the post of professor of anatomy in Bologna. His famous book, Anatomy, has treated at the anatomical text for over a century, and have 15th century. This century, the time when one of the greatest genius of all times, Leonardo da Vinci, lived. This Da Vinci was the originator of cross-section anatomy, and the most this admirable and important work done by him in the field of anatomy was the collection of drawings of this he observed. And have 16th century. This is a century of the greatest anatomists of all times, the famous Vesalius, and he is regarded as the founder of modern anatomy, because he made the world realize that anatomy can only be taught through dissection. Then 17th century, in this century, this have lived the famous English anatomist William Harvey. He discovered the circulation of blood throughout human anatomy, human body, and published in the book this titled Anatomical, this exercise on the motion of the blood and head in the animals. And this Article 34 anatomical gifts, this anatomical material, anatomical specimen. And this an anatomical gift is a voluntary act of citizens as this transfers of his body throughout a will in a health care organization and institutions for use in the education process and or for scientific purpose. Then this the bodies of people who died in non-violent deaths and are not claimed by relative or this third person for burial within 30 days can be transferred as anatomical material to institutes and healthcare organization for educational and scientific purposes. And in Kyrgyz Medical State Academy from 1996 to 2002 by agreement of the contract improving the quality of the educational process and this scientific activity at the Department of Topography Anatomy and Operative Surgery. This over the years, many employees have undergone training in the study of plastination techniques in the German at the Plastination Institute of the University of Heidelberg. This more than 2,000 exhibits were prepared. Then this University of Heidelberg in Germany Plastination Institute professor this Gunther Von Hagens. Then the plastination, this now view the plastination method was developed in 1977 by Professor Gunther Von Hagens, Germany. The plastination method is patent in many countries of the world. For example, this USA, Germany, China, ATK. Next, the novelty of the innovative method of plastination. This consists in replacing the intestinal fluid in the dead body with special sterilizing compound and resins. This prevents the decay process and the organic body becomes synthetically strong and plastic, which determines the durability of the anatomical preparation. Then the preparation preserved by the method of the plastination have all the properties of the object.
Tamara, you have muted yourself.
Sorry. All the proper the objects of the human body with complete preservation of the structure of organs. They can be stored freely or this at room temperature and normal pressure without visual properties. In addition, the substances used in the plastination, this process leads to the simultaneous sterilization of organs. Then the Plastination Museum of Kyrgyz State Medical Academy was opened on May 23, 1998. This unique cure is the fact the museum of plastics exist only in 5 countries of the world. The museum is also visited not only by residents of our country, but also by tourists who come to use from abroad, the seeing or exhibits they look and admire. And in Kyrgyz Medical State Academy, this from 1996 to 2002 by agreement of the contract, improving the quality of the educational process and the scientific activity at the Department of the Topograph Anatomy and Operative Surgery. Over the years, many employees have undergone training in the study of plastination techniques in the Germany at the Plastination Institute of the University of Heidelberg. More than 22,000 exhibits were prepared. Next, now visible this view. This preparation stages now sit in. She's Abayeva Tamara Soronalivna, and this is a lesson with 4H students in Hindi, in Pakistan, in Thailand, and
Tamara, sorry, could I just say you're running over time? Please, could you round up now and finish your talk, please?
Okay. This escalation and all the wave goes from Tashkent, and during the lesson, for example, explain this topic of upper limb and lower limb muscles of she is Lyudmila Ivanovna. And next, modern preservative, although you kept a tissue in the very good condition, elastic and soft, they are as similar to the tissue of the living person as possible. But in order to preserve this compress in this way, in intergeal, this vascular system is needed, and this preservative are disported into it. But in 2002, the Jogorku Kengesh of Kyrgyzstan government adopted a resolution banning this work with the human corpse. This for these opportunities to work with corpus really organs in Medical University of Kyrgyzstan today are practically deprived. Students of many universities in Kyrgyzstan can get acquainted with the structure of the body using the diagrams or simple meninges. And today have these problems. Kyrgyz University are practical deprived of the opportunity to work with complex really organs or 3D models. And on the periphery materials are just this disaster. And only have the interactive anatomical table, this gift in now have in Kyrgyzstan, this Pirogov. And so in conclusions, I would like to note previously students themselves dissected, compressed, prepared joints, made operative approaches and applied suture. Therefore, the problem for students is not enough time to leave for independent work, because all the students in future doctors, which negatively affects their training of future doctors too. And therefore, we must find a way out of this situation. And last, this Plastination Museum of Kyrgyz State Medical Academy. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Tamara. That was most interesting. And there are some questions for you on the chat, which I will allow towards the end of the discussion. I ask all of you who are participating to post questions on the chat. Then the individuals can see them now and will raise them at the end. It's now my pleasure to invite Professor Stefania Natola from Italy to do the next presentation. And it's a very interesting discussion, female body identity and transformation. Stefania.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bev, for your kind introduction. And I also would like to thank all the organizers for having invited me here. Then I will tell you something about a very special danse macabre. Such a danse macabre will mostly address the human female bodies, subjected to the process of thanatos metamorphosis. From ancient Greek, thanatos, it means death, and metamorphosis, it means transformation. So these bodies have been all subjected to treatments for body preservation. What remains, as the anthropologists are used to say. I will show you also some cases of spontaneous preservation of bodies, spontaneous mummification in the field of the thanatos metamorphosis, and only one case I will show you a very peculiar story of a corpse subjected to thanatos morphosis, so simply to the natural process of putrefaction, what disappears according to the anthropology. So in particular, I will show you some stories of charming female bodies during a journey through centuries and through countries. Let's start with the interesting story of the Lady Dai. Lady Dai was a Chinese woman, and her mummy, that is very well preserved, tell us a story of a very rich woman, of a woman who conducted a sedentary life and was overweight, was affected by several pathologies. This is another story. This is my favorite story, the story of Tachibana no Kachiko. This is the only one in which we don't have body preservation, but body dissolution. Tachibana was an empress in ancient Japan, was a devout Buddhist, and was exceptionally beautiful. And she requested that after her death, her body was left on the street simply to decompose. This is an important lesson related to the impermanence of things and to the transience of beauty. So the street in which Tachibana was left to decompose is today called, it is in Kyoto, it's today called the Katabira no Tsui, literally the crossroad of corpse. Katabira was the simple dress, white kimono, that Tachibana chose to be left to decompose on the street. And the lesson of Tachibana, the Tachibana final act, also stimulated and allowed the creation of a painting, a very peculiar Japanese painting art that is called kusozu. Kusozu, it means the 9 signs, because through these paintings, authors give us very detailed lessons on the 9 stages of the decomposition, as you can see here. These are the very sad stories of 2 very young girls whose mummies, they are spontaneous mummies, were found in the mountains of the South America. These 2 young girls were probably sacrificed to the through the process of capacocha, a bloody sacrificial practice carried out by the Inca people. And their bodies were so well preserved due to the cold and ice of the mountains. Here it is another case of a spontaneous mummy, the mummy of an Italian saint from Messina, Eustochia Calafato. She is also called standing saint because her body, still intact and uncorrupted, is positioned in a glass case in an upright position. She was so beautiful that people say that she was the model for Antonello da Messina depiction of the Virgin of Annunciation. From the sacred to the profane. This is another story, another sad story related to the case of Mary Patterson. She was a very young and beautiful prostitute that was killed, actually killed by bark and hair that we know were resurrectionists and murderers who sold the corpse of Mary to the anatomist Robert Knox, who was so fascinated by the beauty of this girl to preserve Mary's body in alcohol, probably whiskey, for 3 months before dissection. Here we are in Italy again. We are in the 19th century in Lodi, near Milan. The 19th century for Italy in particular was a heroic century for anatomy. This is the story of Paolo Gorini, who was a professor of natural science. He was also addressed as a magician or as a mad scientist. And he was, for all his life, terrified by the phenomenon of decomposition, and counteracted this phenomenon. He called the decomposition phenomenon the insatiable desire of the conqueror worm. He counteracted this phenomenon with a technique that is called petrifaction. And here you can admire some of his stone women. You can see the very well preserved facial details, facial features in these women. Another scientist of that time in Italy, in Padua, Ludovico Brunetti, applied for body preservation another technique, the tannization, using tannic acid. And through this technique, he preserved the body, the female body of a very young girl, Eugenia Perini, who committed suicide for an unfortunate love. When he prepared the poor Eugenia for tannization, he also masked some laceration in the skin of the face of this girl with several tannized snakes, as you can see here, in the act of devouring the girl's face. So it is a sort of allegoric punishment for this lady because she committed the mortal sin of suicide. So it is a very romantic and also Gothic story of the 19th century. We are again in the 19th century in Belgium. This is the story of the so-called girl with hand, prepared by Adolphe Burggra. It is a female body suspended, we can say, between life and death, because you can see one side, here it is the life. It is the face of a dormant girl lying on a sort of a pillow, but on the other side, you can find the death, you can find the violence of dissection. This is the story of Julia Pastrana. She was a Mexican girl, a singer and a dancer affected by hypertrichosis. And the poor Julia was exhibited as a freak during her life and also after death. In fact, his mummy was continually exhibited through Europe and the United States, and only in 2013 her remains were repatriated to Mexico. Here we are again in Italy, in Palermo. This is the story of the most beautiful mum in the world, the Sleeping Beauty, the story of baby Rosalia. Rosalia Lombardo died of pneumonia about 100 years ago. She was mummified, and her body was still exceptionally well preserved, even if during 2009 it started to show signs of decomposition, so it was put in a hermetically sealed glass teca containing nitrogen. This is the story of another famous mummy, the mummy of Eva Peron, Evita. She was the wife of the Argentine president Juan Peron, and her mummy was following the political events through years of her country. In fact, it is a very long and troubled story. Her mummy was first exhibited, then hidden, then sent to Italy, then from Italy to Spain, and finally it was returned to Argentina. But at present, she is not located into the mausoleum of Peron together with her husband, but it rests in the La Ricoletta cemetery in the family grave. These are shocking and dramatic images of women who accepted to be portrayed just before and after death, immediately after death, as you can see here, probably thinking about the possibility of making immortal the story of their life. So we are in presence of a sort of visual mummification. In fact, we can say that photograph, of course, does not embalm the bodies, but it embalms time. Of course, speaking about body preservation, we have to remember the plastination technique and the masterpieces of perfection, of femininity, of charm made by Gunther von Hagen, as you can see in this slide. Femininity that is often associated with motherhood, as in this case, and as was done by numerous anatomists also in the past. Femininity and maternity and motherhood. So we are going to conclude with a look to the future. This is the story of a young girl who died of gastric cancer and pneumonia. She is called Vicky, and Vicky decided to donate her body to be sectioned and digitalized in the framework of the Korean Visible Human Project. Another woman, another digitalized body, another anatomical gift. I like to define these acts as anatomical gifts. This is the story of Susan Potter. Susan Potter died of pneumonia at the age of 87, and she firmly wanted to be included after death in the Visible Human Project of the United States. But not only. During the last 15 years of her life, she was often in company of the medical students, her kids, she said, because she wanted to help young people become better doctors with their gift. She was always accustomed to say. So our Danse Macabre comes to an end, leaving us, I think, simply stories of women who, after death, have maintained their charm unchanged through time. Stories of women who hide the indelible signs of life, I think, in their mortal remains. that have to be considered not only as human remains, but according to the anthropologists, they can be considered remains of humanity. So they have still their identity after death. They have to be considered not something, but someone. I would like to thank my daughter Anna Giulia. She is an anthropologist, and she introduced me in the anthropology of death. And I would like to thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefania, for that absolutely fascinating presentation. I'm sure many of us would like to see the actual specimens, and Francesca has posted on the chat an invitation to everybody who would like to come and see some of them. So thank you, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you later in the afternoon. Right, we go to the next presentation now, and I ask Sagimova Gulzira, who is from Kazakhstan and from the university where this conference is taking place, to present. Sagimova, would you go ahead, please? And Karapov, will you put the presentation on? Sagimova, are you with us?
Good day, dear professors. Let us to introduce our presentation.
Please go ahead.
Just a moment, we are trying to do it bigger.
Показ слайдов.
Our presentation is about body donation in the education process in Kazakhstan. A general tendency towards a decrease in the provision of the educational process in anatomy with cadaveric material is also observed in our country, which is associated with religious and ethical issues. However, today our universities have the opportunity to study anatomy on cadaveric material and dissection, since we still have the opportunity to receive cadaveric material for educational process. Thanks to active work and direct participation of the head of the Department of Human Anatomy of the Medical University Astana, Professor Albakirov, who showed constant attention to providing practice-oriented teaching of anatomy in our universities. In 2015, an order was accepted by the Ministry of Health and Social Development of the Republic of Kazakhstan on approval of the rules for making and transferring an anatomical gift to healthcare organizations. In 2020, it was supplemented also by the order of the Minister of Health of Republic of Kazakhstan. This order developed in accordance with the Code of the Republic of Kazakhstan on People's Health and Healthcare System. It allows medical educational institutions to receive material for educational purposes on a legal basis. And according to this order, it includes all the sides of this process. The general regulations say that as anatomical gift, in addition to bequeathed organs and tissues, a body of person with established identity unclaimed for burial within 20 days from the date of death in medical organization is recognized. Unidentified bodies are not recognized as anatomical gift, and organs or tissues as well bodies of unidentified deceased and died from diseases posing as danger to others according to the list of socially significant diseases, as well as a person to which a forensic medical examination was performed, cannot be transferred as anatomical gift for biomedical research. Also, rules for the transfer of anatomical gift to healthcare organizations, transfer of organs and tissues or bodies of persons who voluntarily donated their organs or tissues both during life and after death are carried out by a person through a duly executed contract or will, as well as unclaimed bodies as anatomical gift in healthcare organization is carried out by the Commission on the transfer of anatomical gift. And it is approved by the order of the head of the healthcare organization transferring the anatomical gift. The act on the transfer of anatomical gift is drawn up. When transferring and receiving anatomical gift, healthcare organizations that transmit and receive anatomical gift record the transfer and receipt of anatomical gift in the register of the transfer and receipt. Also, information about the anatomical gift is not subject to disclosure. And conditions for making and transferring the anatomical gift is presence of agreement and will drawn up in accordance with the civil legislation of the Republic of Kazakhstan for the voluntary transfer of organs, and it can be also the body of a person with established identity and unclaimed for burial within 20 days from the date of death in medical organization. Also, one more condition is absence of signs of violent death or suspicion on it. It is necessary to distinguish between the concepts of anatomical gift and organ donation for transplantation, since the anatomical gift is transferred no earlier than 20 days of biological death and can be used only for educational purposes. In practice, we have as anatomical gift the bodies of persons with established identity who are not claimed for burial in 20 days. It's the main source of our anatomical gifts. And also, of course, because of shortage of cadaveric material, we use just other opportunities. Because the complexity of obtaining of anatomical gift and ethical side of this issue just limit our possibilities to provide the educational process with cadavers, but in the same time, a presence of a legal basis allows us to have the necessary material in small amount, and with careful use of it, we continue teaching students using preparation in practical classes. And as a measures to just overcome the shortage of cadaveric material, we use the plastination method. Our Professor Bakirov has a traineeship in St. Petersburg with Dmitry Starchik, who is the head of the International Morphological Center, and he introduced this method in our university. And also one of measures for surgical trainings, we use the animal organs which we take just from the market, such as organs as the mutton heart, for example, and the organs of cattle such as liver, intestine, lungs, and others. And usage of this of the animal organs help us substitute the real tissues and keep safe cadaveric material. And we consider that dissection and work with real organs is the main distinguishing part of anatomy discipline, and we always try to keep work with cadaveric material. Our plastinates also use it for exhibitions, for educational exhibitions. Our Professor Bakirov also the educational exhibition, and we try to continue to work with cadaveric material. Thank you for attention. We can hear you, Professor. Maybe you should connect your microphone.
Sorry, thank you very much, Professor Sagimov. Really interesting presentation. Lots of questions which come to mind, which I most certainly will be asking you later. So thank you, and we move on to the next presentation, which will be from Professor Diogo Paes of the University of Lisbon in Portugal. Karapov, can you please load?
No, I'm loading it myself. I'm loading it myself.
Great.
So okay, thank you very much, and Bev, and for the organization for inviting me to participate in this roundtable on body donation around the world. And I will briefly present the reality in our country, in Portugal, as well as in my institution, the Nova Medical School of the new Nova University of Lisbon. Some of this material, which I will present briefly, will be developed a little bit more tomorrow in our workshop on post-graduation hands-on courses using human cadavers. So the topics of this presentation are which are the main challenges, or were the main challenges, for building a body donation program in Portugal. The religious, the legal, and also developing a well-organized publicity campaign, which was done by the Portuguese Anatomical Society. And then I will tell you about the numbers of donations at the Nova Medical School, which is the school actually in Portugal who has more donations. We have been working on this for many, many years. Previous to COVID and during the pandemic in 2020, this was a request of our chairman. The religious framework in Portugal, you can see here by the numbers that it's mostly Christian, so it's mostly Catholic, has been all the time. So the other religions and also people without religion represent a minority. Of course, being the majority being Christian, this imposes or creates a problem or an eventual problem of making people donate their bodies, because most of the Christian people like to inhumate their bodies, so put their bodies in coffins and go and in cemeteries, and eventually for cremation. And so this means that it is good to have a legal framework and also to have a participation of the church near the people, to tell them that this is good for the advancement of science and is good for society. It is also very important that the Portuguese Anatomical Association started a campaign in the year of 2000 called Donating is Human. And this is a leaflet that shows this was distributed in all hospitals and clinics and everywhere. So everybody, all the population in Portugal had access to this information. This is in Portuguese, but it mainly tells people how important it is dissection, how dissection is important, how human cadavers can be useful for the advancement of science, both by research and especially for providing the opportunity for having better doctors. And this is very touching to the people. So this is what happened in the, this is the translation of part of the leaflet, which tells what is the use of cadavers in teaching and scientific research. So this leaflet provides all the necessary information for the people. And you will see the result of this and also the result of the change in legislation. So the legal framework in Portugal before the year of 1999 was a legal diploma, which is an ordinance number 40 from 1913. This was the only one. Also in 1993, in the 1993, we had the publication of the law of transplantation. And you will see that this is important for the decree law that regulates the use of cadavers for teaching and research, which is the 274 of 1999, and which was very, very important in our country to develop the body donation programs. So the ordinance from 1913 just said that medical schools could obtain bodies of people dying in hospitals, asylums, and public assistance houses, provided they were not otherwise claimed by their relatives in a 24-hour period. Now, this is preserved in the present law, which means that, of course, there is the body donation programs. People should go to the medical school and donate their bodies. But if an indigent body, someone who is not claimed by their family in a period of 24 hours, if this happens, the body can be used by the medical schools. So both situations exist presently in Portugal. So in 1993, the publication of the transplantation law is very important that I explain to you. This is an opt-out policy, which means that everybody in Portugal or living in Portugal is a donor. So the bodies can be used for collection of organs for transplantation and also for teaching and research. Okay, if you don't wish for your body to be used in these two situations, then you must go to the Ministry of Health and inscribe your name in the non-donor's national record, which is called RENDA. Okay, so in 1999, when we have the publication of the law that regulates the use of cadavers for the teaching and research, the government used the transplantation law in the sense that people could inscribe their names in the same non-registration, non-records, so the non-donation records for this specific purpose, so for the purpose of teaching and research, which makes compulsory for the medical schools for the consultation of this record before using the cadaver. So even if you have a donor that in life has come to the medical school, has bequeathed his or her body, when the person dies and the body comes to the medical school, we have to go online and consult RENDA, so consult the non-donor's record, to see if by any chance the person has inscribed the name there. And if it is inscribed, we cannot use the body. Okay, so this is important. Now, for the final part of my presentation, the numbers in our medical school. You can see that before the campaign of the Portuguese Anatomical Society and before the publication of the decree law regulating the use of bodies for teaching and research, we had from 1982 to 2000, 79 donations. And from 2001 to 2020, we have 3,564. So you see the boom, which is incredible. So you have, in the first 19 years, you have 4 donations per year. And thereafter, in between 2001 2020, we have an average of 178.2 donations per year. And our record was reached in 2019 with 348 donations. And you can see that in 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have a reduction of 67% in the body donations. What is extraordinary is that we still have 33% because everybody was confined at home, and we privilege the personal face-to-face donation process, so bequeathal process. And so every time there was a little opening in the pandemic situation, people would come to the medical school and donate. All of the rest of the process was done by letters or by phone. We don't try not to use much the internet about this. So this just to let you know, because Bev asked me to, we had a huge decrease in the donation during the period of the pandemic in 2020 and also in 21. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Diogo. It's really so great of you to present this to us and to hear that there is at least one country where there are no real problems with donations and that the medical schools and the allied health professions are all well supplied with bodies. Thank you. And again, we'll come back for questions later. I'd now like to invite the next participant, Professor Umut Sehirli from the University of, or the School of Medicine, Department of Anatomy in Turkey. And Umut, we look forward to your presentation. Are you going to load?
Thank you. Yes, just a moment. Yes. Dear colleagues, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present in this Congress. So I'm thankful to organizers, Professor Gulmira, and also her colleagues. The topic of my presentation is past and today of body donation in Turkey. Before 2000s, the main source of cadaver was unclaimed bodies in Turkey. The cadavers come from mental hospitals, unclaimed bodies who passed away at the hospitals. And on those days, when we look at the donated bodies in all Turkey, there were only 4 donated bodies till that days. Then I would like to look at the reasons why we have so much, why we have insufficient number of cadavers on those days. The number of the medical schools started to increase, and so we faced lack of cadaver problems. At the same time, the conditions of mental hospitals improved, and also the funeral services are improved by municipalities. So the source of unclaimed bodies, unfortunately, those poor conditions, then the number of cadavers coming to universities decreased. Then we ask questions how we find cadavers. Of course, it is like in the history. All these events happened in the same sequence. Then we start to look for new solutions. There are some milestones in body donation in Turkey. In 2001, I made the first scientific presentation in national meeting in another city, Edirne, and I mentioned about the solutions to cadaver insufficient lack in anatomy departments, and I said that body donation is the only solution. On those days, by chance, On the left, you see this great orchestra chef. He donated his body, and it is he was a very popular musician. It took a lot place in the media. Then I presented, or I published the first paper sourced from Turkey about cadaver donation. So it was awareness in anatomists also. A professor you see here donated his body, and also he took a lot of place in televisions. So the awareness started to increase. And here you see on the right, the president of Turkish Religious Affairs declared that body donation can be done according to Islam. It is not against Islam, he said. So this also helped us a lot. And meanwhile, Turkish Anatomy Society started a campaign, but unfortunately, it is not at the level we expect. I translate here: donate, let your body live in medical education. It still continues, but as I will explain in next slides, we couldn't reach the level we expect. There is a study done by Ok and Gürses in 2020. It was published. In this paper they asked the departments the source of cadaver. In 85% of departments, unclaimed bodies are still used. The term import, I don't like this term. The bodies obtained from abroad are used in 40% of about 40% of the departments. I would like to mention that in Turkey there are strict rules to obtain bodies from abroad. I mean, ethically, and some due to problems which may occur, virus contamination or bacterial contamination. And 50% of the departments use donated bodies. If you look at the reasons of low number of donation, there are some beliefs against donation. I mean, how they are used. There are sometimes, there are jokes of medical students in social media. So these kind of wrong beliefs may decrease the number of donation. Religious beliefs also a reason time to time, I mean, maybe most of the time, which people do not donate their body. And another major problem, unawareness. Okan Gürses also published that only 12 departments of anatomy have information about donation at their web pages. There are also some negative news on the media, especially in last years. These bodies obtained from some foundations in the United States or in Europe, some foundations. The commercial part of donation, I mean, transferring body from one foundation to a medical school took a lot part in the media. So this caused a lot problem also. We faced a lot of questions related to this aspect. And when we look at the results or the period, how it changed body donation, here you see on the left the study again from Gürses paper. You see the number of donation registration increases abruptly, and here you see total cadavers received and donated cadavers received. So there is an increase in number of cadavers received. This is this information obtained from all medical schools in Turkey. And here you see the results of Marmara till 2015. The number of cadavers increases. I mean, now it is higher than these numbers. When we look at the current situation, in Turkey we have hundreds of medical schools. There are 100 medical schools. This is very high number. So even the number of donation increases, it is still not sufficient for anatomy education. In our school, we have 141 registered donor at the moment, and each year we receive 2 or 3 donations. I mean, they pass away and we receive the bodies. So there is an increase in the number, but it is not at the level we would like. But I'm hopeful for the future because when the number of the registered people increase, each year it increases, and we observe other medical schools also has a lot registration to donate their bodies. So but after a time, some of them will pass away and we receive their bodies. So this is the current situation in Turkey. I would like to thank the organization and you for your patience. Thank you. I use my time.
Thank you very much, Professor Sahirli. I think you have shown us a very well-documented presentation. It's really good to see the evidence, the graphs, the numbers, and I do thank you for that. Again, questions towards the end of the session. I'd now like to ask Dr. Brendan Billings, who's at my home school, the School of Anatomical Sciences at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, to speak on body donation, a South African perspective. Brendan, over to you.
Thanks, Prof. Are you able to see my screen, Professor?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Thank you. All right. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present on our body donation programs in Africa in particular, but more specifically South Africa. I'd like to start off with an influential study conducted by Habert in 2018, where they were able to geographically identify the provenance or source of cadavers globally. And that had a focus on Africa as well, in addition to. And what we noted from the data for Africa in particular is that the sources of cadavers were exclusively unclaimed, mostly unclaimed. And from other references based on African studies pertaining to the provenance, by Gangata, for example, we realize there's also a high dependence on purchasing bodies within Africa. However, when we hone in on South Africa, more importantly, we identify that we actually have mostly body donations in terms of our provenance, which is something that is quite useful. But when we look closer at South Africa, we have about 14 medical schools, and 10 of which have body donor programs, 2 of which whereby cadavers are sourced from other institutions, and the remaining 4 are still in the process of developing programs or have no body donor programs at all. And really the drive towards these body donor programs, which is crucial, I believe, from an ethical stance, is based on legislation, and I'll speak to that in a bit, but also social. There's a huge social drive towards the establishment of these body donor programs. And these are predominantly guided by individuals, anatomists within these separate institutions that push for this ethical form of identifying or sources of cadavers. If we hone in though and realize that we have these body donor programs across the country. However, the numbers of cadavers are disparate in relation to the actual body donor programs. And so I've got a few examples to provide here. So my own institute, the University of Witwatersrand, for example, we have an average of 80 cadavers per annum. We've got approximately 8 students per cadaver. The University of Cape Town, also a large university medical school within the country, has an average of 40 cadavers per annum, and they have about 6 to 7 students per cadaver. And during the COVID crisis, we weren't affected much due to our supply of cadavers because of these successful body donor programs. However, not all universities within our country share the success in terms of the body donor programs. So, for example, the University of KwaZulu-Natal from 2016 onwards had approximately 28 cadavers per annum. And this university has equal numbers, if not close to, in terms of health allied students. This results in about 15 to 20 students per cadaver on rotation. So there's clearly a need for cadavers in certain universities, even though they have these body donor programs. Other universities, for example, the University of Limpopo, Durban University of Technology, have body donor programs, but again, they're running short on numbers, and they tend to source cadavers from other institutions just to supplement their teaching and research. And the COVID experience exacerbated this lack of cadavers within these specific institutions. So what is the factors behind it? And first, I'd like to speak to is legislation. So within South Africa, our legislation allows for the use of unclaimed remains. This was from the 1983 Human Tissue Act, which was revised in 2003, which led to the Chapter 8 of the National Health Act. The National Health Act also provides for unclaimed remains. However, due to an inability to receive unclaimed bodies from state mortuaries, once the administration changed to provincial Department of Health, we found that bureaucracy was dictating whether or not individuals from KwaZulu-Natal in particular could expect cadavers. So basically, the law allowed for unclaimed remains, but bureaucracy got in the way. And this led to a reduction in the number of available cadavers, namely because the unclaimed remains were not able to be received from this university at that specific stage. So that's an effect of legislation. But more specifically, the major challenges, and I think a lot of the professors spoke to this in previous talks, is really around culture and religion. So we too have this issue. And this study conducted by Brenda de Gama and others really highlights this issue. They specifically honed in on a specific ethnic group. So South Africa has a very diverse a group of individuals, different cultures. We've got about 11 official languages. And so culture really plays a huge part of it. And one of the 9 ethnic groups within the Black South African population, in particular, the Zulu population, De Gama looked at this, and she came up with 4 broad themes around the culture that prevented individuals from donating from that specific population group. And this included that death is not the end. These individuals believe that the family who has died will, for example, fetch you when you die and the ancestors are directly linked to the living. This in itself prevents individuals from wanting to donate their remains. There's also the added contribution of the significance of rituals and customs carried out in terms of human tissue. So for example, the body must be buried within a week. The body must be buried, and cremation is looked upon as a Western culture and not so much a African culture in this specific context. So these factors around the culture really prevents individuals from donating their remains. Another aspect is a religious one, and this is really from an unpublished study. I was looking at our second-year medical students, and I had a survey questioning their opinions on whether or not they would donate their remains. Predominantly, the Hindu and Islamic students were very much against donation because of religious reasons. And one quote was, "My religion prohibits donation of my remains." So it's quite interesting that Professor Serilli mentioned that within Islam, there is actually an approach to donating remains under that specific religion. In terms of the solutions around these body donor programs, many institutions have tried radio, television, and social media. Some have been very effective. But once again, the culture is so strong, whether or not you have this awareness, you will still find this to be a major deterrent in terms of donation. Other aspects include the dependence on old age homes. So many awareness campaigns would be directed, my own institution in particular, as well as others, do approach old age homes. But this becomes an ethical problem. There's an ethical dilemma around this vulnerable population and for them to donate. Other solutions thought of were financial incentives. Many individuals would be willing to donate their remains if there was some sort of financial benefit, not only their own remains, but the family as well. Again, the ethics becomes a problem around this type of solution. So just to briefly give you a history of South Africa, and I'm sure many of you are aware of apartheid. And what apartheid really is was a racial segregation of individuals and the oppression of non-whites. And how does this affect us within the dissection walls? So, for example, individuals of color, myself included, would not be allowed to dissect cadavers of European descent or of white South Africans. And other aspects of apartheid that influenced our donation was this high dependence on unclaimed remains, which were predominantly from Black South Africans within the country. So in effect, what we had is an abundant number of Black South Africans, younger individuals represented in our dissection walls, but predominantly from unclaimed remains. So what am I really trying to say here is that there was a more diverse ethnic representation of cadavers, which was legal, but this was at the consequence of individual consent. So it wasn't ethical. If we go and fast forward to post-apartheid, post-1994, and we're currently living in a democratic society, and if we look at our main population groups within South Africa, Black African takes up 81%. The white population is about 7.6%. We have mixed ancestry, and Asian and India follows suit. So if we compare, and I use my own university, this is a study we conducted in 2019 over a 5-year period, we identified that only 0.8% of the cadaveric population was represented by South African Black individuals. University of Cape Town did a study and they found only 5%. So if you look at these figures in relation to 80%, we really have very few individuals that represents the masses within South Africa. So in a nutshell, we have majority of cadavers of white ancestry. This is a legal and ethical approach, but at the consequence of diversity. So we have less diversity within our dissection walls, but it is legal as well as ethical. This takes me to my final slide, which is really an ethical dilemma. So body donor programs are important for ethical reasons, especially associated to informed consent, as I'm sure most of you are aware. However, it comes at the cost of diversity in South Africa. Do we need a diverse representation of an African population groups within our dissection walls? This is a question I'm just throwing out there to everyone. Is pigment that important? In terms of representation within our dissection walls, you could argue if we remove the skin, are we all not the same, anatomically speaking? As an individual of color from South Africa, I would argue, yes, we do. We do require representation within our dissection walls, not only from a social construct, whereby I can relate to the individuals. Remember, our cadavers, for most medical students, are their first patient. And I would assume that you require some sort of relation to this in terms of representation. I would also say from a research perspective, it's important to have the largest population group represented within the dissection walls. Do you remember these cadavers also feed into other collections, research collections, such as our skeletal collections, which feeds into many different disciplines. So I would definitely argue that we require diversity within the dissection walls. I'm just not sure how we find that balance. And to give you another example, is it acceptable to use unclaimed remains during periods of restriction, such as the COVID-19 pandemic? Again, this is a huge ethical dilemma, and I don't quite have the solution or the answers to it, but I thought I'll just pitch it at this roundtable discussion, and possibly we might be able to find a balance at some stage. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it once again.
Thank you, Brendan, for an excellent presentation and for raising a number of questions for our discussion period. I think that was really most valuable. And I'm very pleased to see that Professor Andreas Winkelmann, who is chair of the FACHEM committee, the Ethics and Humanities Committee of the IFAA, has joined us. Welcome, Andreas, because I'm hoping you're going to participate in trying to help us sort some of these questions at the end. Thank you so much, Brendan. And now we're going to move on again to Professor Francesca Capello, who is from Palermo and in Italy, and we look so forward to your talk. Francesca.
Yes, thank you. To avoid any technical problems, I registered my presentation and I sent it to the organizers. So now they should be able to play it. If not, I can do it by myself.
Karapov, can you please load that? Okay, Francesca, are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready to go. Actually, I registered it, so I don't understand why you cannot hear my voice.
So Karapov, there was voice recorded?
Yes, so the best is that now I share my screen. I prefer to do that.
Okay, so Karapov, if you'll take off the presentation.
Yeah, okay. Let me try from my computer now. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to be here today to present my presentation about the state of art of body donation and dissection in the anatomical institutes in Italy. I would like to start with a very brief historical background. After more than a millennium in which anatomical knowledge was handed down by using Galenic and Aristotelic books, Vesalius, as we know, reinvented our discipline and at the same time set up the scientific method. And his fellows were among the most famous anatomists in history. All these happened in Italy during the glorious Renaissance centuries. Let me do a brief step back. To speak briefly about Mondino de Liuzzi, then in Bologna, he was the anatomist who resumed the practice of dissection of the human body, abandoned for centuries. But his dissections had just didactic purpose, as we know, for the demonstration of Aristotelian and Galenic conceptions. So very different from the Thessalian revolution. And let me do also a brief step forward to present briefly the main Thessalian anatomists, because among them there is one that I would like to speak briefly, Giovanni Filippo Garcia. He studied medicine in Padua with Vesalius, and after that he taught anatomy at the University of Naples for about 20 years. He's quite famous because he discovered the stapes and identified also for the first time the lesser wings of the sphenoid. In Palermo, we remember Garcia because he created the first anatomical dissection room in a beautiful place that I hope you will have the opportunity to visit in the future. Now I move to the situation in Italy during the last century. The progress of technology has pushed research on the human physiology and pathophysiology towards increasingly cellular and molecular aspects. The advent of impact factor and the race for fundings has profoundly changed the objective of research, no longer aimed only at increasing knowledge, but also producing a large number of articles under penalty of the impossibility of making a career in the academic world. All this has led more and more researchers, relatively passionate about human anatomy, to spend more time in biomolecular laboratories at the expenses of dissection rooms. The dissection practice was maintained only in few locations and at the cost of great human and economic sacrifices. The dissection rooms in Italy have gradually become incompliant with the workplace safety laws and have been abandoned and closed. The investments to renovate them, in fact, have been considered uneconomic by the universities, in many of which the use of corpses for teaching and research purposes have been completely dismissed. But what happened last year in Italy was even worse. In February 2020, the Italian Parliament, under pressure from a fundamentalist Catholic lobby, approved a new obscurantist law on the donation of the body, which, in fact, has temporarily blocked the donation of bodies to anatomical institutes. In particular, the law establishes centers of reference to which the donated bodies will confer for their use for surgical training above all. However, these centers cannot be activated because for over a year the implementing decrees of the law have not yet been issued. In addition, the law, once the implementing decrees will be approved, will not allow the donors to choose the center to which to allocate their body. Furthermore, it will be possible to use the body only for a year, and then it must be returned to the family in decent conditions. What does this mean? Legal disputes with the donors' families are feared. Finally, the law does not mention the word anatomy or anatomies even once, ignoring and erasing centuries and centuries of history of medicine in Italy and worldwide. So, which is the state of art in Italy? Actually, in this moment, there are only 7 active dissection rooms in anatomical institutes in Bologna, Brescia, Padua, Palermo, Roma, Sassari, and Torino. And we use mainly anatomical specimens from USA. What do we do in Palermo? Actually, some years ago, we activated a multidisciplinary center for the enhancement of the corpse donated to science. In these centers, there are a number of researchers from many and different scientific fields. And we organize cadaver labs for specialists in training, mainly using anatomical specimens from USA. And we were able also to implement a laboratory of virtual anatomy where we, among the other things, perform 3D scanning of human organs for research and didactic purposes. In conclusion, in Italy, dissection practice in anatomical institutes has been in decline for at least 30 years. Instead of stimulating through targeted investments the resumption of this activity by universities, the Italian Parliament has preferred to approve a new law which, in fact, has blocked the possibility of receiving bodies from voluntary donors in those few anatomical institutes that have succeeded to maintain this practice. However, many anatomists in Italy, even those of the universities where there are no active dissection rooms, feel the need to train their young researchers in dissecting practice through internship in centers in Italy and abroad where the dissections are carried out. This gives good hope that dissection in Italy can still survive, and after this second middle age of anatomy in Italy, we hope that we will be able to resume this very useful practice of the training of doctors and other biomedical students, not only from the medical and surgical point of view, but also from the philosophical and bioethical one. Thank you for your attention.
Once again, thank you so much, Francesco. We really commiserate with you on the decline in your country, but we congratulate those of you who have been able to maintain your dissection laboratories, and hopefully again during discussion, we will be able to help each other by making other suggestions. So thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're running over time, and this is why I'd asked everyone to try and be as short as possible. The organizers have given me permission to continue with the roundtable for a while. I do not know how long our system will hold out, but I'm going to continue and ask Professor Susana Biasutu from Argentina, from Cordoba, who has joined us to present to us now. Susana, will you go ahead, please?
Yes, I need to send
Karapova, do you have the presentation? The sound from Susana is not very good. Susana, can you hear us? And we've lost her. She sent me a message to say she is having problems with her internet connection. But Do you have a presentation with a voiceover, or is it just an ordinary presentation? We seem to have lost Susanna totally. I can't see her on my screen. So let's give her a few minutes to see if she can reconnect. I will WhatsApp her in the interim. If she cannot reconnect, then I suggest that we will proceed to the next presentation. If you'll just give me one more minute to get a response from her. Could I perhaps suggest that we proceed? There's no response coming through. I think her connection's bad. Could we perhaps proceed to Professor Hongjin Sui?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much. And here's from the Dalian Medical University in China. So Professor Hongjin Sui, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So can you see, okay, I'm trying to share my screen. No, can
no,
you?
No, not yet.
Okay, I think that you need to stop the last sharing and then I can share my presentation.
Karapova, can you stop the last one?
Okay. Okay. Can you hear? Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, so it's really my great pleasure to have this opportunity to give my presentation. And good evening from China. My topic is body donation in China and memory of donators. So I came from China, and so Dalian, you see this is Beijing, and I'm south to Beijing is just 1 hour by airplane. And this is the main entrance of my university, Dalian Medical University. And we have a very beautiful campus, and we have a beach inside our campus. So here I'd like to invite all of you to, if you have the opportunity of this difficult time, I hope I can host you in Dalian. Okay, now let's talk about body donation. I think the bodies are of great significance for medical science, and also body donation is very, very important for anatomy. And in my university, we started body donation programs since 1995, so which is 26 years ago. And now we can accept almost around 100 donators each year. So I'd like to show how we do the memory of donators. So this is the entrance of memory hall of donators, and this is inside. And in all the 4 walls of this memory hall, we put the pictures of each donators on the wall. So you can see we have many donators. And now we have difficulties in how to get more spaces for the more space for the future donators. And also among those donators, there are also some famous person. For example, this person is a very famous scholar in China, and this is a teacher in formal teacher in our university. And this is a general, Navy general, and his wife. So there are many very famous person. So we always in our hall we have a special place to have some record of their personal histories. So in this way, people can know that they are not only normal person, but also some special person donated their bodies. So for this person, he is my teacher in my university. He is my English teacher. So he donated his body after his death. And in my lecture, when I have lectures to my students, I always talking about him. So in this way, to help the medical students to know that to learn to study anatomy is not a usual studying. So it's different from other subjects. So learning anatomy based upon the donation, the contribution of other people, especially donators. So in this way, students studies very hard when they studied anatomy. So also we have many ceremonies each year to show our memory to the donators. Some in the university, some in the very special place where we have a monument for the donators. So you see, this is our ceremony, and also we have invite students to talk about some poem, some articles, and so in this way, with this ceremony, is reported to the public. So to attract more people are willing to donate their body. And also for the students, they pay much attention for the study of anatomy because they know the anatomy is the contribution of the donators. You see, this is World Anatomy Day. So this is our teachers. So we show show our respect to those donators, and we also have some activities. You see, they also those are all our activities to show our memory to the donators. For the new students, those are the new students. These are new teachers for in our university. And for each new semester, we also have these activities. And this is an activity in the first class of regional anatomy. And also for those living persons, for those who signed their donation form, we also occasionally, not occasionally, sometimes we were visiting donators. And also for the donators' family, sometimes we visit and have some talk and ask what they're willing, and also talk about the thanks of those students and our universities to the donators. So in this way, the family members are encouraged, are respected for their donations, and also so does the donators. And this is the time when we accept the body donators. Sometimes we also have a ceremony when we accept the bodies. So also we also print many promotion documents to distribute it to the public, and also talk about the significance of body donations. So our activities to for the donations are reported in China in many kind of media. This is the interview of Chinese Central Television. And now you see, just in our university, we have 3,000 donation forms, and those people are willing to donate their body. So this is not only in our university, it's also common in China. In China, many universities has a memory hall for donators, and also talking about some persons who are have very good stories. For example, this person signed a body donation form in 1948, and he donated his body in 2001. When he, you see, this is the interview of newspapers about him. He was died at the year of when he was 106. So he has very good story. So we also talking about time, and this is her daughter. Her daughter visit the memory hall and feel comfortable for his the donation of his father. And this also happens in many other universities. I just go quickly. You see, for many universities, for example, this is Peking, this is this is in Peking, and this is in Tianjin, and also in Zunyi. So in many universities, we have such memory hall and such memory activities. So in this way, the body donators feel very happy and feel they are respected. So in this way, many people are willing to donate their body to medical universities. So this is the activities for the World Anatomy Day. This is the second World Anatomy Day. So, okay, these are our activities, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and congratulations on the excellent work that you do with your communities. It's evident that the input you make yields fantastic results, and I really congratulate you. And I also want to thank you for China being such an active participant in the IFAA's World Anatomy Day. Thank you. I think it's an important day on which many communities, anatomical communities around the world, can actually interact with their own communities to attract donors. Right, thank you. Professor Susanna Biasutu is back with us. So Susanna, please, if you would now do your presentation. As mentioned earlier, Susanna is from Cordoba in Argentina. Susanna, have you lost us again? There you go. Please go ahead.
Can you listen to me now? Sorry, well.
Yes.
Is it? Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I have many problems this morning. And well, as Professor Kramer said, I am Susanna Biasuto, professor from the National University of Cordoba at the Chair of Normal Anatomy. First of all, I want to thank the Symposium organization and the Roundtable Chair to invite me to participate. I'd like to share with you what we are doing from our university to change the course of body donation in our country. In Argentina, universities have progressively abandoned the use of unclaimed bodies during the last 20 or 30 years and changed for provision for by donation. It was mostly due to legal and sanitary reasons more than ethical ones. However, universities didn't develop programs for body donation. This was due to several confluent reasons according to our analysis. And I'd like to mention what we think about that. We think that at the end of the past century, many thought that technological resources could replace the use of bodies for teaching, learning in anatomy. The lack of interest of the university authorities in getting involved in an issue that could be rejected by the population. Third, the lack of commitment of professors to generate processes that require time, dedication, and ethical support, and that don't provide immediate results. Then, the lack of bodies was critical before the pandemic and became even more acute due to restrictions. Personally, I had spent years researching the legal framework and trying to generate unsuccessfully a group of professors from different universities to work on this subject. The committee we created at the Argentine Association of Clinical Anatomy never progressed, and I haven't managed interest and support from the authorities of our university until the current dean, who asked for specific local data and to sustain the program. With the support of the university in 2018, we started a research project to determine the importance that health science students and professionals assigned to bodies for anatomy teaching and medical education, and also their will and that of the general population towards the donation of own bodies. All these results are published in 5 different articles in the Argentine Journal of Clinical Anatomy, and you can freely access them. We provided a lot of information about those groups more willing to donate their bodies, but those that mostly interested the university authorities were the following. Between 1,000% and 93% of medical students and 93% of medical doctors and dentists considered bodies are very important for anatomy learning and professional training. (42% of medical students, 48% of medical doctors and dentists, and 41% of the general population of Córdoba should be willing to donate their own bodies. This data was very significant in the context of the world literature and in any way forced the decision of our university authorities. To complete the project, we proposed the creation of a program for procurement and donation of bodies for teaching and research at the National University of Córdoba. And due to the mentioned results, the program was approved on the 22nd of April 2021, so just this year, with a working group of professor and student assistants of anatomy under my direction. Despite the difficult time caused by the pandemic, the group is working with great enthusiasm and responsibility. We have developed all the information and forms in accordance with current legislation, organized the program to facilitate the donation, managed a 24 hours phone, updated the website created during the project, developed informative talks, and are managing agreements to facilitate access to doctors and transfer of bodies. We are now working even instead the restricted pandemic period we are living now. We trust that we are able to continue working by video conference and phone calls. We are working on an information campaign and the first donor appreciation ceremony. We know that we have a long way to obtain results, but we think to be working on first steps. Before the end of this presentation, I like to recognize the hard and responsible work of all those who participated in the research project and those who are now working at the Committee for Body Procurement and Donation. Thank you for your attention, and I remain at your disposal if you have any questions at the end. Thank you again, and that's...
Thank you so much, Susanna. I'm so pleased that you were really able to join us again for a very valuable contribution, and I'm sure there are going to be questions at the end. So now on to our last speaker, who is Professor Sapargal Rakhmanov from Aktobe in Kazakhstan. And so we look forward to your talk. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, dear Beverly Kramer, dear colleagues. West Kazakhstan Marat Usmanov Medical University was founded in 1957. Since this year, the Department of Anatomy has been working. The teaching of anatomy is based on three components: practical training, scientific research, and self-training. The practical lesson is accompanied by theory and the research of corpses. The scientific component anatomy is conducted in three directions: through the student scientific circle, and the tradition of our department is self-training of students by providing access for students to anatomical specimens out of schedule time on any day. We have excellent results in students' mastering of anatomy. Since the foundation of anatomy department, one of its tradition of usage of natural preparations together with theoretical training and the study of anatomy through dissection courses is preserved to this day. That is today the use of natural preparation and corpses is accompanied by the use of modern anatomical tables. Of course, in many countries, even in our country, there were legal, religious, and other restrictions to use of corpses for educational purposes. However, Now this possibility is provided by law. The appearance of anatomic tables, which are often used in recent years, is really informative in the formation of flexible models of organs for understanding syntopic features. However, once these tables are made by people, we can see only the programmed situation, and even taking into account the individual features of human structure, the information provided by this table. At our department, students and the teachers actively take in the dissection course. However,
I wonder if you could advance your slides. I think the slides aren't advancing.
However, due to the large number of students, it is impossible to cover everything. Therefore, the work of student scientific circle is carried out in three directions: dissection, preparation, and the processing of museum preparation, experimental work. At a certain stage, each group presents its work to all students, and other students get acquainted with the results of the work through this presentation. The museum is also actively used as an additional educational tool. The Anatomical Museum of the Anatomy Department was created by students. The role of the museum in teaching of students their training as future specialists is very important. The museum...
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but your slides are not moving. We can't see your slides. Karapov, can you please help? Gulmira, the slides are not advancing on the screen.
Yes, yes. Karapos, включи, пожалуйста. Карапос, слайды же есть, да? Нет, конечно. Четвертый слайд.
Thank you. That's great.
Next. Next. Stop. Назад. Еще назад. Еще назад. Все, stop. At our department, students and the teachers actively take in the dissection course. However, due to the large number of students, it is impossible to cover everything. Therefore, the work of student scientific circle is carried out in three directions: dissection, preparation, and the processing of museum preparation, experimental work. At a certain stage, each group presents its work to all students, and the other students get acquainted with the results of the work through these presentations. The museum is also actively used as an additional educational tool. The Anatomical Museum of the Anatomy Department was created by students. The role of the museum in teaching of students, their trainings is future specialists is very important. The museum has very valuable preparations. If you come to our university, I'm ready to show you the anatomical museum. Next slide. In recent time, in the scientific work of our department, the results of preparation and the corrosion methods performed by the students, members of the scientific circles, show different aspects of variation anatomy. This slide shows variation for several branches of arteries from the aorta to the kidneys. As the next slide shows the corrosive preparation of the coronary arteries of the heart, so that the variations for branching clearly visible. These works are part of the research work performed by students. However, the usage of harmless methods in modern life are not available for daily use, and these methods are often used only in clinics to clarify certain pathologies in patients. We cannot use them in mass examination. Therefore, it is true that they are not available in mastering of normal anatomy. Next slide. At the end of the academic year, students who have completed a dissection course present the results of research work to all students at the annual students scientific fair, which allows all students to get acquainted with the results of their work. On the next slide, you can see the presentation of preparations prepared by our students. Next slide, please. In order to determine the effectiveness of online learning during a pandemic, a survey among the 2-year students who have learned anatomy was conducted, and in revealed that the vast majority of students, 86% answer that in order to understand anatomical structures clearly, it is necessary to see the condition of organs and to work with them in the practice. In fact, 78% of students do not agree that distance learning on anatomy is not an abstraction to mastering the theoretical issues on anatomy. That is, distance learning doesn't reduce the quality of education. That is, online learning increases the responsibility of students. We also had a mixed form of distance learning, which means that in addition to online training, students come to the department to study the practical part with corpses and then natural preparations. 83% of students note that the effectiveness and the application of anatomy will increase if they do not learn the theoretical part of the traditional form of this type of training, but they will taught only planned preparation, examination of corpses, organs, elements of the dissection course only for a short time. A small percentage noted that distance learning is not necessary at all. Only traditional training is more effective. Next slide, please. Of course, in our country, there are problems with the receiving of corpses and their use for educational purposes. This is a problem not only in our country, but in many countries. However, the law adopted in our country has defined the possibilities of the anatomical givens. I think we will see the results in the future. And today, the anatomy department of our university has great potential. The teachers who worked before us predicted that our anatomists would have a shortage of such anatomical preparations, and they will still have enough stocks of corpses and anatomical preparations. Next slide, please. Назад еще. Next slide, please, stop. Назад. Еще назад один слайд, пожалуйста. Stop. Our department has organized dissection courses for students of the L'Aquila University for several years, thanks to the close cooperation between our anatomists and the Italian scientists. With the support of Professor Guido Macchiarelli, our students were able to undergo scientific internship in Italy. At present, next slide, please. At present, our department has the opportunity of organize a dissection course on the features of the child body, anatomy of head and the neck, and the cardiovascular system. Therefore, we are ready to organize invite students of your universities for our dissection courses. We train not only doctors who work with patients, but also pathologists and forensic experts. In this regard, we would like to emphasize the importance of anatomical dissection. Thanks for attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Rachmanov, for sharing with us your work. And I think that brings all the presentations to an end now. And what I would like to ask is that we now pose questions and have discussion. So I've picked up some questions from the chat, and I'm going to ask, going all the way back, if Professor Diogo Paes would like to start with his question to Tamara from Kyrgyzstan. Diogo, if you would like to ask your question on donation and informed consent.
Yes, thank you, Bev, very much. Tamara, I love your presentation, but there is one question that always comes to my mind when there is plastinated specimens on exhibition in museums. My question is whether the people that donated if the people donated their bodies and gave informed consent for being exhibited in the museum. That's just a curiosity question, because this has ethical implications.
Tamara, are you with us? Tamara?
Maybe she's not.
I'm just scrolling through and I don't see her at the moment.
Okay, so.
I was also going to ask her a question, but I would like to extend Diogo's question to everybody, because this is something that Brendan Billings and I talk about a lot. And that is these plastinated specimens we see, which are exhibited in museums and also at anatomical congresses. Sometimes we see these specimens posed in very compromising positions. And I often wonder whether the person who donated their body was asked whether they consented to being displayed in this manner. And I wonder what the group here thinks about that. Shouldn't we ask our donees whether they would mind being put as a specimen in a body world exhibition, and especially in those compromising positions? What do you all think? Just if you could somehow wave your hand or speak. I can't see all of you on my screen at the same time, but please feel free to join the conversation. This is very important.
I can just say that, for instance, in Portugal, it would not be possible for a Portuguese resident to be exhibited in such a manner without having an explicit, and not explicit, a specific informed consent for this purpose. It's not for teaching and research. This is not enough. You must consent that you will be exhibited, your body will be exhibited in this manner, namely in the Anatomical Museum or in exhibits that have commercial interest. So you really need to consent specifically for that in Portugal.
Anybody else would like to say something about that? Susanna?
Yes. May I have a few words? Oh, yeah.
We'll come back to Susanna.
Okay. Well, as we have not an automatically donation, and each person has to complete a form for body donation, then we have considered that aspect into as an informed consent in the donation form.
Okay, thank you. Hong Jin, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, personally, I'm working in plastination, and I also do some public exhibition with plastinated specimens. And nowadays in China, it's very common to have a specimen showroom or university museum in medical universities, and show some anatomical specimens, and also include full body specimens. And the advantage of this is very clear, and this not only show to the medical students, but also to public. And this makes the medical university very attractive for new students. So it's helpful for medical university to attract more new students. And also it is encourage more people to understand the significance of a body donation, and make them willing to donate their bodies. So I believe the showing the plastinated body to the public is very helpful for the medical education. But the specimen should be in a very good dissection, very beautiful position. And also we should show our respect to those donators. And for the body donation form, some people are especially said, I'd like to donate it for exhibition. But usually we accept the donated body because, and sometimes we use it for the public exhibition, and also for the university museum, because we believe the public education is also very important. So it's not only professional education, but also public education. So to help the public get to know some medical knowledge, this is good for the whole society.
Yes, so I thank you for that, Hang. I'm not arguing with appropriate anatomical specimens being displayed in public. What I get very concerned about is displays such as those by Gunther von Hagen, when the bodies are plastinated and then are in very inappropriate positioning. For example, in the act of copulation. And I often wonder whether people were asked for consent by von Hagens to be displayed in that way. I understand about the educational side in a normal plastination museum or exhibition. I am just concerned about the consent in exhibitions such as displayed by von Hagens and others who use these compromising positions.
Mm-hmm. I think what you said is a key point, is that from this just from the exhibition, it looks similar. All the kind of body exhibition show looks similar, but from our professional aspect, we should think about if the exhibition is for education or for medical knowledge to the public, or for fun. So the main difference is that to see the content. Let's see the exhibition of Gunther von Hagens. Most of his specimen for the knowledge is the same, just showing the superficial muscle, not the inside. If you see that specimen with another specimen, the difference is only the posture, but not the knowledge. This is the key point. So from him, he feel him as an artist, not a scientist. So to use the body, donated body, as the material to show his talents. And as anatomist, we are not. The body is a carrier for knowledge. So we should use the body to show the anatomical knowledge, health knowledge. So this is a difference. Although we, for the public exhibition, we also plastinated bodies, but it's different. It's for art to show the talent of the creator or to show the knowledge of the body, inside the body. This is a big difference.
Sure, I agree. And I think the important word you used is respect.
Yes.
I'm going to open now for some other questions from other people. If we go to Stefania, I had a question for you, Stefania, if I may. I wanted to ask you about Brunelli. You spoke about Brunelli, and I wondered if Brunelli could be considered the father of the technique for preserving cadavers. We all use that injection technique, and was he the first that really started this technique for the preservation of cadavers?
You are speaking about tannization by Ludovico Brunetti?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I think that he was the first one to use in 19th century the practice of tannization, because it was at that time, but still today, a technique used for the treatment of the liver of the some tissues originating from animals to do clothes or other kinds of objects. And he used this technique that is based on the use of tannic acid, but not only. And another important idea he had was to inject this solution that was actually a fixative solution into the cardiovascular system. So it is another important innovation in the preparation and preservation of bodies, but also single organs. So he injected this solution into the vessels. So he actually preserved by the internal phase the organs. This is the reason why he obtained so good results. He won in Paris the Grand Prix, showing the punished suicide and other tannized specimens. So at that time, he was very innovative.
Great, that's fantastic. Thank you, Stefania. Diogo has indicated on the chat that he has a question for, sorry, Diogo, was it for Francesco and also
for Francesco? Yes, for Francesco. That's right. Yes. So it's more a comment, Francesco. First of all, it's so unfortunate that the situation in Italy. And one thing that I have said to Guido, and we have been talking about this in the past, is and in the present, is that since the situation in my institute is quite favorable, it is possible to arrange for some Italian anatomists to come to dissection courses in my institute in Lisbon. So this can be arranged, you see, so that we can help each other.
Diogo, I thank you very much, since it was my idea to write directly to you an email after this meeting in the next days to ask exactly something like that, since in the past some young people from my group have been in Gdańsk in Poland, in Malta, and actually we have also a cooperation with the Galveston in Texas, and they spent sometimes over there, of course, in very small groups of people, and for a period of 2, 3, or 4 weeks. So I thank you very much, since
you are welcome.
If you can give us this opportunity, we will surely will use that. So,
thank you.
And I will write you an email. We have our emails, so I will write you soon. And
I will wait for that. I will wait for the email.
As I wrote in the chat, in 3 minutes, I have to leave, unfortunately, since I have another official meeting in my university.
So, Francesca, before you go, I'd also like to say that our university in Johannesburg runs a summer school in dissection for anyone who wishes to attend, and, you know, coming from a relevant institution. It would be much more expensive to travel to South Africa, but just imagine the exciting destination. And hopefully once COVID has allowed us to open borders again. But think about that.
We should exchange this kind of information by email, by our mailing list.
Sure. Before Francesca goes, we can go on discussing if people would like to, but I really would like to thank all the participants. They put a great amount of effort into their presentation, provided us with some excellent information. I'm sorry the presentations went on so long, so that we can't have a more in-depth discussion. But I'd also like to thank Karapov for the technical assistance, and also the organizers for allowing us to have this wonderful roundtable. So Francesco, goodbye to you. I'm going to suggest to all the other participants that we continue for another 15 minutes, and then we'll have to close down, because unfortunately I too am involved in the Bulgarian Association of Anatomy meeting, and I will have to leave at that stage. So for 15 minutes, please, let's have those other questions, Diogo, and anyone else as well.
Yes,
Diogo,
I just had one comment to Hongjin.
Yes.
Lovely to see the celebrations for the donors in China. Be absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
of the world, actually. You know, I know that in Thailand they do the same, and in other places. It's really beautiful. But I have one thing that I would like to tell you. We also honor our donors, obviously, but differently, because in Portugal, you cannot exhibit the photos of your donors.
Oh, yes, it's different culture. Yeah, different, yeah.
The law forces to keep anonymity, so we cannot in any context exhibit photos or anything from our donors. So you understand,
Yes.
eventually for scientific purposes, but not an exhibition like that, you know, open to the people or to the public. It's not possible, but it's beautiful what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yoga, and I'm going to scroll through. Who else would like to ask questions? I've got many, but I'd like you all to join in this discussion. Please just shout out, because I can't see all your faces on the screen at the same time.
I also thank you, especially Beverly, for chairing this meeting. And here we see that we learn from each other a lot, and there are a lot way to walk to improve donation programs all over the world. So to share information is quite nice for me. I would like to thank everyone, their nice presentation. For myself, I learn a lot, and there are some points I catch to improve my donation program at my school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comments or questions from other people? I have a question for Diogo. Diogo, you have this wonderful body donation program, and you get loads of bodies. Now, what happens in a year when you get too many bodies? Do you refuse bodies?
Well, yeah, actually, this is a problem. We are moving our premises. We are going to a brand new place in a couple of years where we will have a lot of space. And now we don't, but we have, we are very fortunate to have the pathology department of the hospital really next to us, and it's just door to door. So it's, and they have a huge refrigerated room that we can put, and this is an agreement, obviously, with the chairman of this the department, and we can put, if we have excessive bodies, we can put them there. We do, and we did have to, this particular year in 2020-21, due to COVID, we had to refuse some bodies because we were not, first, we were not sure about the clinical information of the, so related to the deaths of these people. And although we could test the cadavers, we prefer not to receive the bodies, even being donors. So it always hurts us because we want to honor the will of our donors, but when it's not sure, we did not. So, but sometimes it happens when the body, for instance, is very, very far away. There is some financial restrictions as well. So when it's far in a foreign country or very far away, then unless the families are willing to pay for the transportation, sometimes we cannot pay for that. It's the institution that is paying for all of this. Yeah. But we try to, we have been able to deal with this. Sometimes we get a little tight, but we have been dealing, well, I don't know in the future, we will see. But in the future, we are moving to another place with much more space.
Thank you very much, Diogo. Susanna has posted on the chat a question for everybody. She wants to know, has anybody experience of virtual ceremonies? Have any of you experienced virtual ceremonies? Anyone? So Susanna, doesn't look as though anyone here currently has experience with a virtual dedication ceremony? But I know that there are a number of schools around the world who have started them up. And I think, Brendan, am I correct that there was one at the end of last year, a virtual ceremony, which was posted online?
Yes, Prof. Sorry, my understanding of virtual was a bit different. We had a video that we had created just from our students and staff with a dedication that we distributed to the students. And that was our form of a virtual dedication ceremony. But it wasn't a live stream where we actually had participants available. It was just a video we created from staff just to dedicate a type of memorial for the donors.
Thank you for that, Brendan. Anyone else with questions? I'd like to ask Brendan a question. Brendan, why do you think the body donation program at WITS has been quite successful?
I'm sorry, Professor, I got distracted. Could you say that again?
Why do you think that the body donation program at WITS has been successful? You're getting in excess of 80 bodies a year, and they're all donors. The majority are donors. Why is this so?
Yeah, so Prof, I think it's really because of the awareness campaign that's been run. I think that's really been helpful. But also the old age homes has been another facet that we get a lot of donors from in relation to. So I think that's the two main driving aspects of it all. I can say the same about UCT from discussion with some of my colleagues on that side, that it's a similar approach. But I also think with us, we don't have this cultural limitation that some of the other provinces might have, because I think it's more of a westernized kind of culture, so to speak, within Gauteng in particular, compared to something like KwaZulu-Natal or the University of Limpopo, where this cultural aspect is a real deterrent, so to speak, in terms of the donor program. So even with awareness campaign within those regions, I think the culture is still quite strong, and people are resistant to donate. But with that said, it might change as the more recent generation comes to the fore. Hopefully, as more students of color become educated and spread this information to families back at home, that individuals might be more prone to donate, even with that limitation of culture. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Beverly, give me the word, please.
Peter?
May I just give you a very short... I want, first of all, I want to thank you and Gulmira for having organized this important, wonderful session. The topic is really important. As you see in some countries like Italy, the problem is still technical and political. And of course, I thank very much the OGOC that offered us the possibility to organizing a network for our students. And I think that this session that was wonderfully chaired by Beverly, but this is not new, as usual. And of course, is just one of the main aim of our International Committee of Morphological Science. We want to preserve the section. We think that the section is the basis for a good formation of a medical student, a doctor, a dental student, and so we cannot avoid to continuing always to support this. Also with the new technologies, of course, virtual dissection is quite important. It should be side the real dissection, and we cannot forget the importance of this in the formation of our medical doctor. So I really want to send my compliments as president of the association, to all the speakers and to all the nations, so huge from Argentina to East Asian. So I think is exactly what we want in our association. Beverly is a very great manager of the international meetings. And so I think that we can do, we have a lot of hope that we will improve a new anatomy for this century. In this century, anatomy will be again the first disciplines in medical students. Thanks to all very much. Really.
Thank you so much, Guido, for those words. I think what you've said is hugely important, and perhaps we can draw this session to an end now by ensuring that in the future, similar sessions are held at more international congresses. I know there is one planned for by Teresa Vasque and Jessica from Costa Rica in the near future in October, and hopefully we can ask the organizing committee of the IFA Congress next year in 2022 to have a similar symposium as well. But in coming to the end of this, I'd just like to make some comments about what I felt was important and what came out of some of these talks, and particularly where the institutions were good at maintaining their donor programs. It's obvious that communication is important. Communication with our communities. If we interact with our communities more, if we bring to attention the body donor process to our communities. In the case of, I think it was Umit who said they communicated with their Islamic communities so that they found out that body donation is allowed in the Islamic groups. I think if we could continue this and make this better known, we would be able to derive or source more bodies. I think the Portuguese model that was shared with us by Diogo this morning is exceptional. This legal document which says you have to opt out rather than opt in. I think that would be very, very difficult to institute in many countries. But of course, it is worth thinking about, particularly in countries where I know that body donor programs are being currently thought about. For example, in Nigeria, where they're trying to get a body donor program started. Perhaps this Portuguese model is a good one. And so I really thank you all. I think the discussions and the conversations have been very, very fruitful. And I thank each and every one of you for participating today. Excuse me, and Gulmira and Guido for giving us the opportunity, of course, to discuss this all. Thank you all, and goodbye, and be safe. And well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. See you next time.